Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. If you enjoying this fanfic then press the like button and subscribe my channel.
Let's start a fanfic. Which is what if Tsunade takes Naruto out of the village and years later he unlocks Mokuton bloodline part 2. Nice to meet you, Konohamaru, Naruto said, causing the kid's eyes to widen in shock, confusing Naruto. I'm Naruto, he added. Everyone then began eating while Naruto started to tell the third Hokage and Konohamaru about his life in the capital and his training. Konohamaru was absolutely amazed by Naruto. Not only did Naruto not call him honorable grandson, but he was also super strong and was related to two of the previous Hokages. The third Hokage was also impressed with Naruto's recount of his training with Tsunade and Jiraiya. He was also surprised to hear that Naruto knew about his parents. Even though he did not say it, the third was fairly sure that the boy knew about the Nine Tails as well. About an hour had passed since they all sat down, and Naruto had been expecting to get some memories back from some of the clones in the library who did not get any reading materials. There couldn't be more than 2,000 books and scrolls in there, right? He asked himself before the third Hokage broke him out of his thought. Naruto, I've arranged for you to take the graduation test at the academy, he said, getting Naruto's attention. I'll be accompanying you, he added, causing Naruto to smile and turn to Konohamaru. Would you like to come too, Konohamaru? Naruto asked as he turned to the kid, causing him to light up. Can I? He asked, causing both Naruto and the third to chuckle and nod. The trio finished up breakfast and began making their way over to the Shinobi Academy. The academy was located next to the Hokage's office, so it would be about a 15-minute walk from the Sarutobi clan compound. Konohamaru was walking in between the Hokage and Naruto with an excited look on his face. He was going to get a chance to see what the academy graduation exam was like before he graduated. He was giddy with anticipation over the fact that he was going to get an advantage over everyone else. Seeing the look on the little boy's face, Naruto could tell exactly what he was thinking about. He could not help but shake his head at the kid's thinking. As they were walking by, people would stop and greet the Hokage and Naruto, much to his surprise. It would seem as though the word of his return had truly spread throughout the village. When they reached the academy, Naruto had expected to see some academy students around, but there were none in sight. Where are all of the students? He asked, getting the Hokage's attention. The graduation exam was held 2 days ago, he explained as they walked through the entrance of the school. Usually, we give everyone a week off after the exams, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head understanding. Only the instructor who will be giving you the test is here today, he added as they entered the building. The Hokage then led Naruto to one of the classrooms with Konohamaru following closely behind. As they entered the room, Naruto saw the Chunin that he had captured last night along with Mizuki. Good morning, Lord Hokage, the instructor said with a bow towards the Hokage before turning to Naruto. Lord Senju, he said with another bow before moving to Konohamaru. Konohamaru? He asked in surprise, seeing the kid there. Hey, Iruka-sensei, Konohamaru said with a wave. I'm here to watch big bro Naruto take his exam, he said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at his choice of name. Speak of which, let's get started, the Hokage said, causing Iruka to nod and motioned Naruto to sit at one of the desks. First we will do the written portion of the exam, he said as he placed a sheet of paper and pencil in front of the blonde. You have 1 hour to complete it, he said before motioning Naruto to start. When Naruto started the test, he could not believe how easy it was. Thanks to all of the books that his grandmother made him read, he breezed through the exam as though it was nothing. There were only 10 questions on the exam, spending only 1 minute on each question. Naruto finished the exam in 10 minutes and spent an extra 5 minutes looking over his work. Done, Naruto said, surprising everyone. That was fast, Iruka commented while the Hokage nodded in agreement. You still have 45 minutes left, don't you want to look over your test? Iruka asked, to which Naruto shook his head before speaking. I already did, he said as he held up his test for Iruka to take. It was super easy, he said with a grin. The Hokage did not know how to feel about all this. Should he be proud that he now has a shinobi this smart or embarrassed at the fact that his Shinobi Academy test was so easy? He was going to have to bring this up at the next council meeting. Okay, let us move on to the ninjutsu portion of the test before we head outside for the taijutsu portion, Iruka said, knocking the Hokage out of his thought. Naruto nodded and stood in front of Iruka waiting for him to give further instructions. Please perform the body replacement technique, Iruka said, causing Naruto to nod his head before replacing himself with Konohamaru, who looked confused as to how he got to the front of the classroom. Huh? Konohamaru asked as he looked around and saw Naruto standing where he was giving him the thumbs up. Very good, Iruka said as he wrote down some marks on his clipboard as Naruto moved to stand in front of him again. Now please perform the transformation technique, Iruka said, earning a nod from Naruto before he transformed into a perfect copy of Konohamaru. It's me, Konohamaru said with a grin. At first, he was bored when he had to sit there and watch Naruto take the written exam, but now, he was having fun. Very good, Iruka commented as he wrote some more things down on his clipboard. And finally, please perform the clone technique, he said before he watched Naruto snap his fingers, causing a puffy of smoke to appear beside him as a perfect copy of Naruto stood there staring at Iruka. Wonderful, Iruka commented while making a note that the clone appeared to be solid. Now then, let us go outside for the taijutsu portion of the exam, he said as he began walking out the classroom with Naruto, Konohamaru, and the third Hokage following closely behind. The group arrived at the back of the academy, which was usually used to hold taijutsu spars and physical training exercises. Iruka then placed the clipboard down and walked over and stood inside of an oval drawn into the ground with white paint. No ninjutsu is allowed. The winner is decided when either opponent surrenders or is unable to continue the match, Iruka explained as he motioned Naruto to stand inside the oval. Lord Hokage will be the judge, he added, causing the Hokage to nod his head. The Hokage then looked at them to see if they are ready before he gave the go-ahead to begin. Begin, he spoke. As he said that, Naruto disappeared in a great show of speed and appeared in front of Iruka, causing his eyes to widen in shock. He then buried his fist into the Chunin's stomach, knocking the air out of him. As the fist impacted his gut, Iruka dropped to all fours and began gasping for air. Winner Naruto, the third Hokage yelled out as he called the batch to an end. He had expected Iruka to put up some sort of fight, but even he did not expect Naruto to have that sort of speed. Konohamaru did not know what just happened. 1 minute Naruto was standing at the edge of the oval, then he just disappeared and appeared in front of Iruka, punching him in the gut. The fight was over in the blink of an eye. Wow, big bro Naruto. That was so cool, Konohamaru exclaimed as he ran up to Naruto. You have to teach me how to do that, he said, causing Naruto to chuckle and ruffle his hair. Konohamaru reminded Naruto of himself as a kid, energetic and always want to learn some super cool technique. Sure, kid, Naruto said, causing the kid to become even more excited. I'll teach you one day when I'm free, he added before turning to the Hokage and Iruka, who managed to pick himself up off the floor. So, did I pass? He asked. Even though I have not graded your written exam as yet, Iruka said while still trying to catch his breath. Your scores on the other two portions are enough for you to pass, he said while taking deep breaths. Congratulations, Naruto, the Hokage said as he pulled out a forehead protector with black cloth from his robe. You are now a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf Village, he said proudly as he handed the forehead protector to Naruto. Naruto held it in his hand, admiring it for a few moments while smiling to himself before he tied it around his left bicep. Thank you, Lord Hokage, Naruto said as he adjusted the forehead protector on his arm. You are to report to the academy in 4 days to receive your team placement, the Hokage ordered out, causing Naruto to nod his head. Now if you excuse me, I'm sure I have a pile of paperwork in my office waiting for me, he said before he turned to Iruka and spoke. Iruka, see in my office when you are done here, he said, earning a nod from the Chunin before he used the body flicker technique to disappear. With the Hokage gone, Naruto turned to Iruka and spoke. If there is nothing more, I will see you in 4 days, Iruka-sensei, Naruto said, causing Iruka to nod his head back at him. Naruto and Konohamaru then began making their way out of the academy. What are you going to do now, big bro? Konohamaru asked while looking up at Naruto. Well, I'm going to head back to the clan compound and explore the place. What about you? He asked as he looked down at the boy. I'm going to go look for my friends to train with, the little boy said, causing Naruto to smile at him. Well, I guess I'll see you around, squirt, Naruto said before using the body flicker technique to appear back in front of the compound gates. Naruto entered the compound and resealed the gates before making his back into the main house and straight to the vault for the summoning contract he found the previous night. He did not bother to go check on his clones in the library due to the fact that it had only been a few hours since he left them. He was a fast reader, however he was not that fast. When Naruto got to the vault, he grabbed the summoning contract and made his way to the Senju clan's private training ground. It was located a little distance away from the main house. While walking to the training ground, Naruto could not help but marvel at the beauty of the Senju compound. There were cherry blossom trees scattered throughout the compound, a small waterway that cuts through some areas in the compound with some rather large koi fishes swimming in it, and some very beautifully designed small wooden bridges going across. The compound was absolutely gorgeous. When he arrived at the training ground, he walked straight to the middle and opened the scroll. He bit his thumb before writing his name in blood in one of the slots before putting his fingerprints at the bottom. Once done, he stood up with an excited look on his face. He flashed through the necessary hand seals and slammed his hand on the ground. Summoning jutsu, he yelled out as he pumped a lot of chakra into the technique trying to summon the boss. As his hand contacted the ground, a large ceiling array appeared before a giant cloud of smoke filled the training ground, causing Naruto's eyes to widen as he took a step back. The cloud of smoke was far bigger than he had expected. He had seen both his grandmother and godfather summon their respected summons, but neither of their summon was this big. Who has summoned me? Came a deep voice growling out from inside the smoke. As the smoke began to clear, Naruto could see standing there in front of him was a giant black wolf. The wolf was far bigger than his grandmother's slug summons Katsuyu. It was almost double the size of Katsuyu if Naruto was being honest. I summoned you, Naruto said loudly so the wolf could hear. Hearing someone answering his question, the giant wolf looked down in front of him and saw a human boy standing there looking up at him. There was no fear in the boy's eyes, only excitement. You expect me to believe that a puny little human like you could summon me, the great Fenrir? The wolf, now named Fenrir, asked. He did not believe that a child could have the power to summon him of all his kin. Naruto narrowed his eyes and released all of his chakra, causing the ground beneath his feet to crack and the pressure in the air to thicken as a green outline of chakra surrounded his body. Fenrir was taken by surprise at the amount of chakra that the boy was releasing. He had to admit, for a child his age, the amount of chakra he was releasing was quite impressive. It was not enough to worry Fenrir, but it was impressive, nonetheless. Do you still doubt me? Naruto asked while continuing to release his chakra. It would appear as though you do have the power to summon me, the giant wolf said, causing Naruto to calm his chakra down. Now I take it you wish to be the new summoner to the Wolf clan? He asked, causing Naruto to nod his head before he spoke. Yes, I do, he said as he stared up at the giant wolf. Fenrir then brought his head down to Naruto's level before he spoke. Before you can be a summoner to our clan, you must first be judged, he said, confusing Naruto. Just look into my eyes, he said as his blue eyes glowed as they met Naruto's eyes. Naruto did not know what the wolf was doing but went along with it anyway. When Fenrir's eyes stopped glowing, he stood back up to full length and stared at Naruto for a while. The child of prophecy, he said as he stared at Naruto. When he stared into Naruto's eyes, he was looking at the boy's soul, judging his character. It was while looking at his soul that he saw that this boy was the boy the High Elder in his clan prophesied about many years ago. Looks like we finally have a summoner, he thought to him. I have one question for you, boy, he said to Naruto. What is the thing that is most important to you? He asked mainly because he did not want to appear as though he would accept him as his summoner so easily. My family, Naruto said without hesitation. And if someone were to try and harm your family? Fenrir asked, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow as they turned blood red with slits in his chakra to explode out as well as a large amount of killing intent. I will show them no mercy, Naruto replied in a cold, deadly tone, causing a small smile to appear on the wolf's face. Congratulations, Naruto Senju, Fenrir said while looking down at Naruto. You are free to summon me or any of my kind anytime you need our assistance, he said as Naruto's eyes returned to normal and his chakra and killing intent dissipated. Welcome to the pack, kid, he added. Thank you, Fenrir, Naruto said, flashing the wolf a grind. See you around, kid, Fenrir said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Naruto smiled and picked up the summoning contract before sealing it into the storage seal on his wrist before using the body flicker technique to appear back inside the main house. Seeing as how the day was still young, he decided to go to the library and find one of his great-great-grandfather's techniques train in. As he entered the library, he saw all 2,000 of his clones scattered throughout the library reading books and scrolls. Listen up, he called out, getting all of their attention. Everyone sit down, he ordered, confusing his clones. Even though they were confused, they all took a seat on the floor and waited for further instructions. If you are reading a scroll with wood jutsus in it, stand up, he ordered, causing about 50 clones to stand up. Bring those scrolls, I want a wood jutsu to practice while all of you are reading in here, he said as he began examining the scrolls the clones were bringing him. Wood clone, he said as he examined the scroll. I'll take this one. Dispel yourself, he said, causing the clone to nod its head before dispelling. When the clone dispelled, all the information it had on the wood clone jutsu so far rushed through Naruto's head. Naruto then continued to examine the rest of the scrolls, knowing very well the wood clone would be too simple for him. I think you will like this, one of the clones said, handing him a scroll, causing his eyebrow to raise. Wood Dragon Jutsu, Naruto said with a smirk as he read the name. Creates a gigantic wooden dragon which can be used to restrain a target. Naruto read out the description of the jutsu. Can also absorb the target's chakra. Interesting, he said with an excited smirk. The clone was right, he would like this one. The user can detonate the dragon at any time they wish, creating a large explosion, he said as his smirk turned into a full-out grin. Oh, this is going to be fun, he said with a chuckle. 4 days had passed since Naruto took the graduation exam, and today was the day he is supposed to go to the academy for his team placement. In the past 3 days, Naruto had been up to quite a lot. He had not left the compound at all for the past 3 days, opting to stay inside and train his wood release. His clones had finished reading the majority of the books in the library by the day after his exams. There were still a few books and scrolls left to read, but Naruto figured he would take care of that at a later date. It had only taken him a few minutes to figure out the wood clone technique and an hour to master it the level he had with the shadow clone jutsu. The rest of the 3 days were spent learning the wood dragon jutsu. Naruto had to admit that it was a bit complex and took a bit of time to figure out, but thanks to his shadow clone he was able to grasp the concept and able to perform the jutsu after 2 days of trying. It did require a fair amount of chakra to produce a large wooden dragon, but that was something he had in spades. He had not mastered the jutsu by any means, but he could perform it well enough to defend himself. The thing that really fascinated him with the jutsu was its ability to blow itself up whenever given the command. Naruto was wondering if he could do that with other wood jutsus. If so, then his enemies are in for a world of hurt. Naruto was currently standing in his room looking at himself in front of the mirror. He had just finished getting dressed and was ready to head to the academy. He adjusted the forehead protector strapped to his left arm before smiling and making his way out of his room and out of his house. Naruto exited the compound and resealed it before making his way to the academy. As he was walking there, he noticed the streets were a lot busier than he had ever seen. Since his return, he had yet to fully explore the village. Most of what he saw of the village was when he was walking with the Hokage and Konohamaru when he took his exam. Now he was seeing the streets of the village in full swing. Shops were opened, vendors had placed out their stalls, and people were busy moving from store to store carrying out their shopping. Naruto simply placed his hands in his pocket and weaved his way through the crowded street while at the same time observing everything. As he was walking through the crowded street, some of the people started to take notice of his presence while others did not notice. Those who did notice, however, would stop and talk among themselves about him and about rumors they heard about him. Most of which all dealt with suspicions as to whom his parents are, whether or not he was actually a Senju, and if the rumors about him possessing the first Hokage's wood release were true. Naruto for his part simply ignored all the whispering and stares and simply carried on his way to the academy. At the academy, currently standing in front of a class of newly graduated genin was the Chunin instructor in charge of the academy, Iruka Yumino. He was standing there with a proud smile on his face as he stared at all of his soon-to-be former students, all wearing their regulation headbands signifying themselves as shinobis of the Hidden Leaf Village. This year's batch of graduates had quite a lot of potential, considering the fact that a lot of those who are sitting in front of him were heirs to a lot of the prominent clans in the village, with a few civilian children who have shown some promise. The clan heirs were expected to hold a lot of promise for the future because of the fact that they are the future leaders of their respected clans. As Iruka scanned the class of graduates, he could not help frowning slightly when he noticed that there was one particular heir missing. Where is Naruto Senju? Iruka thought to himself with a slight frown. He was there when Hokage told Naruto that he had to be at the academy in 4 days for his team placement. So, he could help but wonder why the boy was not here in class with the rest of the graduates. Did he forget? He asked himself. He knew all of the Jonin sensei were currently observing the class thanks to the third Hokage's special jutsu that he uses with his crystal ball to view the village from. It would not be a good look to the Jonin senseis if Naruto does not show up here today. It may appear as though he is not taking things seriously because of the fact that he is a Senju. Iruka sighed and shook his head slightly as he got ready to speak to the graduating class. Just as he was about to begin speaking, however, a knock came at the door, drawing the attention of everyone in the classroom. "Enter," Iruka said loudly so that whoever was behind the door could hear. The door slid open, revealing Naruto standing there with a stoic look on his face. "Hello Iruka-sensei, I'm not late, am I?" Naruto asked as he walked through the door, and walked up to Iruka. "You are," Iruka replied as he folded his arms and stared at Naruto, causing him to grin sheepishly. "Sorry," Naruto apologized with a slight bow. "The Hokage told me to come here in 4 days, however, he never mentioned what time I should be here," Naruto explained, causing Iruka to nod his head accepting his excuse. Iruka then turned to the class and spoke loudly. "Class, this is Naruto Senju," he said loudly as he introduced Naruto to the rest of the class. "He will be joining us today for the team placement," he said, causing the children in the room's eyes to widen in shock at who was standing in front of them. "A Senju," one student whispered. "So, the rumors are true, the Senju clan has returned," another said in a whisper. "He's so hot," one girl shouted. "Do you think he has a girlfriend?" Another girl asked. Naruto could only sigh when he heard what the girls were discussing. "Iruka-sensei," shouted a boy from the back of the class with a small puppy in his head. Naruto immediately recognized him as a member of the Inuzuka clan because of the fang marks on his cheeks and the ninja hound on his head. How come he is here for team placement when he didn't even take the graduation exam or attended a single class in the academy? The Inuzuka boy asked in a slightly hostile tone, confusing Naruto. Well, Kiba, Naruto did take the graduation exam and scored a perfect score on all portions of the exam, Iruka said, not surprising Naruto. Even though Iruka had yet to grade his written test, he knew he got all the answers right. If Naruto had attended the academy like you all, I am sure he would have been the rookie of the year, Iruka added, surprising everyone and causing a certain black-haired Uchiha to narrow his eyes at Naruto. As to why Naruto did not attend a single class in the academy, Iruka began before turning to Naruto. That is not for me to say. If Naruto wishes to share that information, he will tell it you all, the Chunin said, not wanting to overstep his bounds when it comes to Naruto's personal information. Naruto simply shrugged his shoulders before he spoke in a nonchalant tone. It's no big deal really, Naruto said as he stared up at the class. I just lived outside of the village with my grandmother. She trained and taught me everything I know, he said with a shrug of his shoulders. And just who exactly is your grandmother? Kiba asked in a tone that was really starting to get on Naruto's nerve as he folded his arms. Tsunade Senju, Naruto replied as he narrowed his eyes at the boy before flaring his chakra, causing all of the newly minted genins in the room to sweat and tremble with fear at the amount of power being released. Do you have anything you want to say about my grandmother, boy? Naruto asked in a dangerous tone. Kiba immediately shook his head no. Naruto then claimed his chakra down before turning to Iruka and giving a slight bow before he spoke again. I apologize, Iruka-sensei, he said, apologizing for the commotion he was causing. It is no problem, please take a seat so we can begin, Iruka said with a smile. Naruto nodded and walked up the stairs to the only available seat in the class. It was in the third row with only 2 people sitting on it. One was a boy with his hair tied in a spiky ponytail and an expression on his face as though he had just woken up. The other was a girl with blue eyes and long platinum blonde hair worn in a ponytail, with bangs framing the right side of her face. She was wearing a purple outfit consisting of a high-collared blouse and a matching apron skirt with bandages on her abdomen and legs, small hoop earrings, and her forehead protector worn as a belt around her waist. As Naruto walked up the stairs to the open seat, his eyes met the blonde-haired girl's. A small blush crept up onto her face, but Naruto simply ignored it and kept a stoic look on his. When he reached the open seat, he smiled slightly at the girl and spoke. Do you mind if I sit here? He asked politely, to which the girl only stared at him and shook her head slowly, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at her as he sat down. Troublesome, the boy sitting on the other side of the girl said as he stared at the 2 of them with a bored expression on his face. As Naruto sat down, he could feel a lot of people's gaze on him, a few of which were hostile. Most of them were coming from the males in the classroom out of jealousy, but there was one in particular that had trace amounts of killing intent. Averting his gaze to the row in front of him, Naruto could see a black-haired boy in a blue shirt staring at him with a murderous look on his face. Naruto for his part had no idea who the boy was. It was not until he saw the symbol on the back of his shirt did he realize who it was. So, this is the last Uchiha, Naruto thought as he stared at the boy. I expected better, he added before turning away, ignoring the boy's presence, only causing the Uchiha boy to become angrier. Okay class, listen up, he said, getting everyone's attention. As of today, you are all ninjas. To get here you faced difficult trials and hardships, but that is nothing. What comes next will be far more difficult, Iruka said as he held both of his hands behind his back and spoke with a warm smile on his face. Now you are only genins, first-level ninjas. All the genin will be grouped into 3-man squads and a join. An elite ninja will lead each squad, he said, surprising a lot of people, causing Naruto to wonder what exactly was taught at the Shinobi Academy. We want each squad to be a balance of strength and ability, so that is how we set them up, he said as he held up a piece of paper. I will now announce the squads, he said before he began reading out team names and the members of each team. I wonder which squad I will place in. Naruto wondered to himself. He was well ahead of any of these genins, Placing him on a squad will not only cause an imbalance but it will also slow his own growth, not to mention hinder the growth of his teammates. Squad 7. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and, he called out before he was interpreted by the pink-haired girl in front of Naruto yelling. Cha! Take that Ino, true love conquers all. Sakura yelled out while turning to look at the girl sitting beside Naruto. And sigh. Your Jonin-sensei will be Kakashi Hatake, Iruka said, causing Sakura to turn and look at the pale-faced boy sitting in front of her with a creeped-out look on her face. Next, Squad 8, Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame. You Jonin-sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi, Iruka said, causing a girl with pale eyes and a boy in sunglasses to nod their head along with the Inuzuka clan boy from earlier. Squad 9 is still in rotation, so Squad 10, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akaimaiki. Your Jonin-sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi, Iruka said, causing the girl sitting beside Naruto to groan. UHG. How come I get stuck with the two worst students in the class? Ino groaned out as he placed her head down on the desk. Naruto could not help but chuckle at the girl's reaction. It can't be helped. They are likely trying to create a new Ino Shikacho formation, Naruto said with a smile as he looked over the girl, causing her to feel a bit better. Troublesome, Shikamaru said as he laid down on his desk. And finally, Squad 11, Iruka said, getting Naruto's attention once more. Consisting only of Naruto Senju with your Jonin-sensei being Yamato, he said, confusing everyone in the room. Iruka-sensei. How come he gets to be on a squad by himself? Sakura stood up and asked the question on everyone's minds. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Sakura, Iruka said with a sigh as he knew this was going to happen. We build each team with a balance of strength and ability. Placing Naruto on a team with any of you will cause an imbalance due to Naruto's training putting him ahead of all of you in terms of both strength and ability, he said, surprising a lot of people while angering some. Another reason why he is on a team by himself is that placing him on one of your squads will not only hinder his growth but the growth of his supposed teammates as well, Iruka explained, causing Naruto to nod in agreement. Lord Hokage personally put all of these teams together. If you have a problem with it, then you are free to lodge a complaint with him, he added with a smirk as he watched everyone look down slightly, not wanting to challenge the decision of the Hokage. Good. With that settled. After lunch, you will meet your new Jonin-senseis. Until then, class dismissed, he said as he rolled the pepper with the team placements on it. Just as everyone was about to get up from their dead, a puff of smoke appeared in the front of the classroom not too far from Iruka, surprising everyone including Iruka. When the smoke cleared, a Jonin was standing there with a serious look on his face. The Jonin had short brown hair and black, almond-shaped eyes. He was wearing a standard Jonin uniform with the only difference being the navy blue shirt under his flask jacket goes up all the way to his chin. In addition to that, he had a Hapuri-style forehead protector that framed his face, similar to that of the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. The Jonin scanned the room as if he were looking for someone. When his eyes landed on Naruto, he stopped and spoke. Naruto Senju, I am your Jonin-sensei, Yamato, he said while looking at Naruto. Meet me at Training 11, you have 15 minutes, the man said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Everyone in the room then turned to Naruto, who simply shrugged his shoulders before standing up. He then held up a half-ram seal and disappeared from the room in a swirl of cherry blossom leaves. He's so cool, one girl said as they all watched the pink cherry blossom leaves fall to the ground. Yeah, he might even be cooler than Sasuke, another said, causing the Sasuke fangirls all to glare at her. Training Ground 11 *. Yamato was standing in the center of the training ground waiting for his student to arrive. He was surprised when the Hokage had pulled from his duties in the Anbu to take on a genin squad. At first, he was not pleased with the idea of dealing with a bunch of genins. It was not until he was told that he was going to be getting the Senju boy to help him train his wood release that he felt somewhat relieved. He was even more surprised when the Hokage told him that the boy the Jinchuriki to the Nine-Tails Fox. It was the other reason why he was chosen to be the boy's Jonin sensei. Yamato was knocked out of his reflection when Naruto arrived at the training ground in a swirl of cherry blossom leaves. Yamato raised an eyebrow at the new form of the body flicker technique which he has never seen before. That was fast, Yamato commented as he had only been waiting there for 5 minutes. I didn't want to keep you waiting too long, Naruto said as he walked up to his new sensei. Well then, let us begin by telling each other a bit about ourselves, Yamato said as he folded his arms. You know, your name, likes and dislikes, hobbies, and goals for the future, he added, causing Naruto to nod his head understanding. My name is Naruto Senju. I like ramen, gardening, and my family. I hate anyone who tries to harm my family and those closest to me. My hobbies are training, gardening, and pulling pranks, he said with a grin on his face. As for my future goals, I want to be the strongest shinobi surpassing both my father and great-great-grandfather, he said with determination written all over his face. Yamato nodded his head as he heard what Naruto said. I guess it's my turn, he said as he prepared to introduce himself. My name is Yamato. I like walnuts in the village. I hate oily foods. My hobbies are reading books about architecture and I don't really have any outlandish goals for the future, he said with a shrug. I guess my only goal is to have a serious spar against Kakashi-senpai, he added, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at his future goals, but he did not say anything. It was not his place to question another person's goals. So, what are we going today, sensei? Naruto asked with an excited look on his face. This usually the part where the Jonin senseis give a test to see whether or not the genin team actually have what it takes to be a genin, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head already knowing that. The test is usually centered around teamwork, but seeing as how it is just the two of us, a test of teamwork would be pointless, he said seriously while Naruto simply stood there nodding his head in agreement. So, am I getting a test? Naruto asked with a curious expression on his face. You are getting a test, Yamato said while looking at his student. We will just be testing for something else, he said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at him. We are going to be testing whether or not you have the strength and the ability to be on a squad by yourself, he said, causing Naruto to grin in excitement. So, we are going to have a little spar and see if you are actually as good as people say you are, he said with a smirk. Yamato was just as excited as Naruto, he only did a better job of hiding it. This would be the first time he would be going up against someone else who passed the wood release bloodline. That was not just it, however, he wanted to see the difference between someone who is naturally born with wood release like Naruto against his own which was artificially gifted. Let's do this, Naruto said as he flicked his wrist, activating the storage seal on his wrist, causing a long black metal staff but 6 feet long to appear in his hand. It was a special staff that Shizune had bought for him when he was 6. It was made entirely of chakra metal, which allows his chakra to flow through it much better than ordinary metal would. Yamato saw that his student was rearing to go and nodded his head. The two of them then stood opposite each other in the center of the training ground. The excited look was gone from both of their faces, with a more serious one replacing it. You are to come at me with the intention of killing me, Yamato said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. In Yamato's mind, Naruto was still a genin. He may be more powerful than your average genin, but a genin was genin regardless of who trained them, and he was a jonin, former Anbu captain. Be careful, wish for, sensei, Naruto said coldly. He was going to take this spar very seriously and he was not planning on holding back. He took the black staff and stabbed it into the ground, confusing his sensei. He then made a single hand seal while holding on to the staff before he pulled out of the ground. As he pulled the staff out of the ground, a large rectangular block of the earth attached itself to the end of the staff, turning it into a rather large sledgehammer. Naruto then swung the hammer up and rested it on his shoulders before speaking to his sensei. Shall we begin, sensei? He asked. Yes, the sensei said before bending down and picked up a small pebble from the ground. He tossed it up in the air and both of their eyes became glued to the pebble as it began falling down to the ground. As soon as the pebble contacted the ground, Naruto disappeared in a great show of speed, causing his sensei's eyes to widen in shock. "He's fast," Yamato said as he looked around for his student. His senses alerted him of a presence above him, causing the Jonin to look up. When he looked up, he saw Naruto falling towards him with his giant hammer reared back ready to turn the Jonin, destroy the Jonin. Earth style. Seismic smash. Naruto yelled while falling. Yamato narrowed his eyes and kicked off the ground, dodging the incoming hit. What happened next causing the Jonin's eyes to widen in horror? As Naruto's hammer impacted the ground, it utterly destroyed the section training ground where Yamato was standing along with the block of the earth which was attached to the staff. Yamato could only stare in shock and horror at the giant crater with Naruto standing in the center staring at him. I guess Lady Tsunade really did train him, Yamato thought to himself as he stared at the boy. Well, the Naruto, let us see how you deal with this, the Jonin thought before he flashed through a few hand signs with a smirk on his face. Wood style. Great forest technique. He yelled out as he pointed his right arm at Naruto. Naruto's eyes were the size of dinner plates when he heard the name of the technique that his sensei called out. Before he could even think about what was happening, his sensei's right arm transformed into multiple trees, all of which were rushing towards Naruto. Acting quickly, Naruto narrowed his eyes and jumped backward, dodging the trees that were making their way towards him. Much to his dismay, the trees followed his every move, causing him to flip back a few times. Channeling some wind chakra into his metal staff, Naruto stopped moving backward and turned to face the incoming wave of tree branches. Utilizing the wind chakra rushing through his staff, Naruto began slicing his way through the multiple tree branches with ease, a bit more ease than he expected. His trees are not as strong as my own, Naruto thought while slicing the numerous branches. While cutting the branches with his staff, 5 clones of Naruto made of wood emerged out of his back and began flashing through hand signs. Earth style. Earth Dragon Bullet. The 5 clones shouted out simultaneously, causing 5 dragons made of the earth to rise up from the ground and rush towards the Jonin. Seeing the 5 earth dragons rushing towards him, Yamato was forced to break off his wood jutsu and deal with the dragons. His right arm broke off from the numerous trees that sprouted from it before he flashed through multiple hand signs. Wood style. Wood locking wall. He yelled before slamming both his hands down on the ground in front of him. Wooden pillars then began to burst up from the ground on either side of Yamato. The pillars then joined together in a dome shape with Yamato in the center. The 5 dragons all crashed into the dome at the same time, creating a huge shockwave. Much to Naruto's surprising, the dome held up to the impact. Deciding not to give the Jonin time to catch his breath, Naruto rushed forward at the dome along with his wood clones. One of the clones charged ahead of the rest and leapt into the air, rearing his fist back in the process. Building up a large amount of chakra into its fist, the clone brought it down onto the dome, releasing the build-up chakra on contact with the dome, utterly destroying the wooden structure along with a good chunk of the ground as well. When the dome collapsed, Naruto and his clones could see that their Jonin sensei was no longer there. Instead, there was a hole in the ground. Naruto's senses alerted him to danger from below, causing the blonde Jinchuriki to leap into the air. Just as his feet left the ground, 6 wooden spikes burst out from the ground, piercing through the chest of the 5 clones while Naruto avoided the other. That was close, Naruto thought as he landed on the ground. As his feet touched the ground, 4 wooden pillars burst out from the ground around him, causing his eyes to widen slightly as he watched the 4 wooden pillars lock themselves up until it created a cage trapping Naruto inside. Wood style. 4-pillar prison technique. Yamato said calmly as he walked up to the wooden cage holding Naruto. I guess you are not as good as they say you are, Yamato said, sounding slightly disappointed, mainly due to the fact that Naruto had yet to use a single wood jutsu other than the wood clone. Oh sensei, Naruto said in a calm voice, putting his sensei on edge. This is cute, he said as he walked over and touched one of the wooden pillars. But all me to show you the difference in our wood release, he said as he narrowed his eyes and flared his chakra. As his chakra came in contact with Yamato's wood, it began sprouting branches with leaves. Naruto then formed the snake hand seal and stared at Yamato. 2 seconds later, tree branches and wooden pillars burst out from the wooden cage and rushed towards the Jonin. He took control of my wood jutsu. Yamato screamed in his mind as he began backflipping away from the assault of trees and wooden pillars. He then heard the sound of something breaking apart, causing him to look at the cage while he was dodging the assault. When he looked over, he saw the wooden cage had broken itself apart, allowing Naruto to calmly walk out of it. Naruto then flashed through numerous hand signs before ending with a snake hand seal. Wood style. Wood dragon jutsu. Naruto yelled out as he pumped a lot of chakra into the jutsu. As he did this, the branches and pillars that were chasing after Yamato stopped and the ground began to tremble, causing Yamato to look around for the oncoming attack. From the left of Naruto, a giant serpentine dragon made of wood burst out from the ground and began encircling the area around Yamato. Yamato stared in shock at the sheer size of the dragon that was circling him. The dragon's body created a circle about 25 feet wide with the Jonin sensei in the center. Yamato for his part was confused about what was happening. The dragon was just circling him, it made no attempts to attack him. Yamato sensei, I really hope you survive this because we need to have a long talk about that wood release of yours. Naruto called out, confusing his Jonin sensei further. Now explode. Naruto yelled, causing his sensei to quickly flash through some hand signs. The eyes of the dragon glowed white for 1 second before the entire dragon exploded, destroying everything inside that 25 feet circle and creating a shock wave that leveled all the trees and wooden pillars Naruto and Yamato had created. The explosion shook the entire training ground and probably sent a small tremor through the village. Naruto had been standing some distance away, so he did not feel the brunt of the shock wave, only a bit of strong wind. Deciding to check if his sensei was still alive, he began making his way over. The explosion had kicked up by a bit of dust, creating a large dust cloud over the area. While walking, Naruto channeled some wind chakra into his staff and swiped the air in front of him, blowing away some of the dust, revealing the damage he had done. In front of Naruto was a 25 feet wide crater with a half-broken wooden dome in the center. It would appear as though his sensei had managed to create a dome to shield himself from the brunt of the blast. However, it would also appear as though the blast broke apart a small part of the dome. You alive, sensei? Naruto asked, hoping the man was still alive. Yeah, I'm here, came the voice of his sensei from inside the dome, sounding pretty tired. Jumping into the crater, Naruto made his way to the dome. Using his chakra like what he did with the wooden prison, Naruto took control of the wood around the dome, causing them to open up, revealing his sensei hunched over on the ground, breathing heavily with a few burns and bruises on his body. Silently creating a shadow clone, Naruto gave it the order to heal his sensei, who seems to be suffering from chakra exhaustion. That was some attack, Yamato said between breaths. The attack would have killed him if he had not pumped the majority of the chakra he had left into the wooden dome to strengthen it, but even then, part of it still broke apart. Yes, with you being in the center of the circle the dragon created, the explosion came from the outside, rushing in towards the center, Naruto explained as he sealed away his staff. The shockwave impacted you from all directions at the same time, doubling the force you would normally feel from an explosion of that size, he added as he stared at the man being held by his clone. I guess you pass, Yamato said as he started to feel a bit better. Naruto grinned happily as he stared at his sensei. We start our first mission tomorrow bright and early. Be here at training ground 11 by 7 a.m. Yamato ordered, causing Naruto to salute him. Yes, sensei. Naruto replied with a salute. Now, about this wood release of yours, Naruto said as he looked at his sensei with curiosity written all over his face. It has been a week since Naruto had been placed on Team 11 and began his shinobi journey. He had expected the life of a ninja would have been exciting. He had thought he would rescuing damsels in distress, bodyguarding some feudal lord, or assassinating some high-profile targets, but instead of all that, for the past week, he has been doing nothing but chores. Naruto thanked the gods that he had his clones to help him, or else he did not know what he would do. Flashback. 1 week ago. It had been a day since Naruto had passed his sensei's little test. Today was the first day of accepting missions together, and Naruto was absolutely excited. He could not contain the wide smile on his face. He was currently walking towards the mission assignment center, which was located within the academy, to meet up with his sensei, and he had a large grin on his face due to the excitement. As he was walking through the village, the villagers were staring at him, wondering what had him so happy. When Naruto arrived at the mission assignment section of the academy, he saw his sensei standing in front of the door waiting for him. Seeing his student walking towards the mission assignment room with a happy look on his face, Yamato could not help but ask what made him so happy. "What are you so excited about?" he asked Naruto. "Today is the first day we are doing missions," his student replied in an overly excited voice. "I can't wait to see what kind of cool mission the Hokage gives us," he added, causing Yamato to smirk, knowing exactly what was about to happen. "You're right. Let's go see what cool missions Lord Hokage has for us," Yamato said with a smirk. Naruto nodded his head excitedly before the two of them walked into the mission request center. Inside of the room was the mission assignment desk. It was a large desk with a banner with the words, "Mission assignments this way" on it. Sitting behind the large desk in the center was the third Hokage, smoking his pipe. To his right was Iruka, the Chunin instructor of the academy. To the left of the Hokage was another Chunin whose name Naruto did not know. When Naruto and Yamato entered, they got the attention of everyone in the room, especially the Hokage. "Good morning, Lord Hokage," Naruto said with a salute as he stood in front of the village's leader. "Team 11 reporting for our first mission," he added while saluting, causing the Hokage to chuckle. The exciting look that was written on Naruto's face was a look the Hokage had seen every time freshly graduated genins come to accept their first mission. "Good morning, Naruto," the Hokage said as he blew out some smoke. "Are you sure you are ready for the mission I have here for you?" the old man said, buttering the poor boy up. "You bet," Naruto said with a thumbs up. He was practically drilling now at the thought of some super cool mission. Yamato and Iruka could not help to bake their heads at the Hokage after seeing what he was doing to the poor boy. "I can handle anything you throw at him," Naruto added confidently. "So, what is the mission?" "Rescuing a princess. Bodyguards to a feudal lord. Assassinating some enemy shinobi," Naruto asked with stars in his eyes. "Walking the Inuzuka dogs," the Hokage said as he held up a scroll with the letter D on it. Upon hearing his mission, Naruto slumped over with a gloomy black cloud hovering over his head. But that's not cool," Naruto said while slumped over. "You are a genin, a first-rank ninja, so you do D-rank missions," the Hokage explained. "Did your grandmother not tell you this?" he asked. "She did," Naruto replied as he stood up. "She said I am going to love D-rank missions," he said with a small growl, causing everyone to chuckle. Naruto sighed and walked up to the desk and accepted the scroll from the Hokage before he stopped and think about something for a second. "How many of these can we accept?" he suddenly asked, puzzling everyone. There is no shortage of D-rank missions," the old man said with a puzzled look on his face. "Most genin teams only take 2 a day, so there are always leftover missions," he said, causing Naruto to nod. "I'll take 5 of them," he suddenly said, causing his sensei's eyes to widen. Yamato did not want to spend all day doing chores. That's a bit too much, Naruto," he said, hoping to convince his crazy genin to only take 1. Naruto on the other hand shook his head and held up a ram seal, causing 4 wooden clones to sprout out from his body. "We'll take 5 of them," he said, causing a slow smile to creep up onto Yamato's face. The Hokage blinked a few times before he smiled and shook his head before signaling Iruka to hand Naruto 4 other scrolls with the letter D on them. Naruto accepted them and distributed them to his clones before turning to his sensei. Shall we get started? He asked. Even though he was disappointed that he will not be going on some super cool mission, he was still kind of happy about the missions he chose. It would give him the opportunity to not only see more of the village but also interact with the villagers. Not so fast, Yamato said as he held up a half-ram seal, causing 4 identical wooden copies of himself to emerge. You are a genin, your Jonin sensei must be present with you on every mission no matter how low a rank, Yamato said, causing Naruto to nod his head understanding. The 5 Narutos and the 5 Yamatos then exited the mission assignment center and made their way to their respected mission locations. For the rest of the week, the cycle continued like that. Naruto and Yamato would show up at the mission assignment center, create 5 to 10 clones and have them do D-Ran missions all around the village. Flashback end. Asterisk. By the end of his first week as a shinobi of the leaf, Naruto and his sensei had broken the record for the most mission completed in a single week, with them completing 51 D-rank missions. Thanks to them doing so many missions around the village, Naruto got to interact with the villagers a lot more. As a result, Naruto had become even more popular than he already was, especially with the female population. He had lost count of the number of marriage proposals he had received in the past week. He turned all of them down, of course. After all, he was only 12 and his grandmother and big sister might skin him alive if he had decided to get married without consulting them. His training had also progressed nicely in the past week. Thanks to his sensei's help and his great-great-grandfather's notes and scrolls, his control over his wood release had only gotten better. He had learned a few more wood jutsus from his great-great-grandfather's scrolls, but he was nowhere close to mastering them. For the past week, his days were split in 2. The first part of the day Yamato and him would do D-rank missions, while the second part of the day would be devoted to reigning with his wood release. The duo of student and sensei had only taken 1 day off in the past week to rest, and now they were ready to get back to work. Naruto was currently walking towards the mission assignment center to pick up another set of missions. When he got there, he saw his sensei standing by the doors leading to the assignment, all waiting for him. Good morning, sensei, Naruto greeted as he walked up to his sensei. Good morning, Naruto, Yamato replied with a smile. Are you ready to get to work today? He asked as he opened the door for his student. You bet, Naruto replied. He honestly did not mind the D-rank missions, if he was being honest. It paid good, he got to meet some rather nice people and all he had to do was some small chores. He honestly did not get what people hated about them. Good morning, Naruto, Yamato, the Hokage greeted with a smile. Good morning, Lord Hokage. Both Naruto and Yamato said simultaneously with a bow. All of your clients from last week have nothing but praise for the 2 of you, the Hokage said with a smile as he stared at his 2 shinobis. The villagers who requested missions last week had nothing but good reviews for the work the 2 of them did on their D-rank missions. Word of your work has spread throughout the entire village, some people are even requesting the 2 of you especially, he added, causing a light blush to creep up on Naruto's face in embarrassment at the praise he was getting, while his sensei just stood there not reacting. Unfortunately, Lord Hokage, those requests may have to wait, Yamato suddenly said, causing Naruto to look at him in confusion. We have completed the necessary amount of D-rank mission, I believe Naruto is ready for a C-rank mission, he said, causing Naruto's eyes to widen in shock while the age-old Hokage nodded his head sagely. I see, the Hokage said while looking through the C-rank requests. This should be simple enough for your first C rank, Naruto, the Hokage said as he picked up a scroll of the letter C written on the outside. A band of bandits has been reported in the area around Tanzaku quarters. They seem to have set up camp in the forest surrounding the town and are robbing those passing by, even going into the town at night and robbing the stores. Your mission is to track down this camp and eliminate the bandits, the Hokage said in a serious tone. Naruto schooled his reaction well. He could tell that the Hokage was being profoundly serious and was giving him a serious mission. Yamato and Naruto bowed to the Hokage before they spoke again. Yes, Lord Hokage, they said before Yamato walked up to the desk and took the scroll. Both he and Naruto then exited the room, leaving the Chunins and the Hokage behind. Was it wise to send him on a mission like this so soon, Lord Hokage? Asked Iruka, who had been sitting next to the Hokage. The old man took a long drag of his pipe and blew out the smoke before he replied to the Chunin. It is best for him to get his first kill out of the way sooner rather than later, the Hokage said, causing the young Chunin to nod his head. With Yamato and Naruto, the duo was currently standing just outside of the assignment hall talking to each other. Go home and pack the essentials needed for this mission, Yamato said while looking at his student. It should take us 2 days to get there and an additional day to carry out the mission. So, pack your essentials to last a week, Yamato said, causing Naruto to nod his head before he spoke. Yes, sensei, Naruto said with a strong nod. Good, let's meet at the main gate in 1 hour, the Jonin suggested, to which Naruto nodded his head, held up a half-ram seal before H disappeared in a swirl of cherry blossom leaves, leaving his sensei, who disappeared 2 seconds later in a puff of smoke. Naruto appeared in a swirl of cherry blossom leaves in front of the Senju clan compound. He unsealed the gate and entered the compound and immediately began packing the necessary things into storage seals. He had a change of clothes to last him a bit over a week, quite a few energy bars, a well-stocked first aid kit, custom-made explosive tags, a few yards of ninja wire, and some extra kunai and shurikens. Naruto sealed everything into carefully labeled storage scrolls before he stored those scrolls inside of one scroll and sealed it into the storage seal on his wrist. After making sure he had everything, Naruto activated the security seals on the compound and made his way to the main gate to meet his teacher. Naruto arrived at the main gate in time. When he got there, he saw his teacher talking to Izumo and Katetsu, the 2 Chunins in charge of guarding the gate. Naruto had seen the 2 of them a few times around the village while he was on his D-rank missions. They were always together and were always friendly to Naruto whenever they saw him, but then again everyone was friendly to Naruto. Walking up to the guard station where his sensei was standing, Naruto spoke, getting their attention. Hey, guys, he said, walking up to the group, getting their attention. Hey, Naruto, heard you are going on your first C-rank mission, Izumo said with a smile. You ready? Katetsu asked, causing Naruto to grin. You bet, Naruto replied with a thumbs up while flashing the 2 Chunin a wide smile. I'm as ready could be, he added, causing the 2 Chunins to chuckle. Are you well packed? Yamato asked, getting Naruto's attention. Yes, sensei, Naruto replied with a salute. Everything is stored away in storage scrolls on my wrist, he said as he held up his wrist, showing his sensei the storage seal. Very well, Yamato said with a slight nod of his head. Let us get going. Tanzaku quarters is quite some distance away, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head and wave goodbye to the 2 Chunin guards before him, and Yamato took off at top speed. 2 days later, Naruto and Yamato had been running for 2 days with only making periodical stops for food and sleep. The sun was currently setting, and they had just arrived on the outskirts of the lively town. They were currently standing on 2 tree branches some distance away from the entrance of the town. It's getting late, we should find a place to rest for the night, Yamato said as he turned to his student. I can have a few of my clones go into town under the transformation jutsu and try to gather some information, Naruto suggested, causing Yamato to look at him with a slightly impressed look on his face. That's great thinking, Naruto, he said, praising his student. Most genins would want to rush into things and immediately want to go looking for the bandits, but Naruto was thinking about the situation logically. Yamato was honestly proud of him at the moment. I will have my clones do the same thing while the 2 of us find a place to stay for the night, he said, earning a nod from Naruto. They both created 5 clones each and had them transform into random people, both males and females, before sending them off into the town to gather information. Naruto and his sensei waited in the forest about 15 minutes after the clones left before they began walking towards the town to avoid suspicion. Yamato and his student checked into an inn for the night and waited to see what information their clones had gathered. Early morning the next day, Naruto and his sensei had checked out of the inn and made their way to the spot in the forest where they created the clones the previous day. They had decided to have the clones come back to that spot and dispel themselves there rather than them doing it in the town. The risk of word getting back to the bandits that people asking around about them before suddenly disappearing in a puff of smoke was high. Bandits are known to be able to pack up their stuff and move in a hurry. Both Yamato and Naruto did not want that to happen. Arriving at the location, the teacher and student duo could see 8 of the 10 clones were ready there and had apparently dropped their transformation once they got there. Signaling them to dispel themselves while they wait for the other 2 to arrive, the clones nodded and disappeared in a puff of smoke. The memories of all the clones came rushing into the minds of Naruto and Yamato. After processing the information for a few minutes, Naruto spoke up. The intel the clones gathered puts the bandits' camp somewhere in the northeastern section of the forest surrounding the town, he said while looking at his sensei. Yes, apparently they recently moved their camp there, Yamato said as he went over the memory of his clone. As he was talking, the 2 remaining clones showed up, both of which were Naruto's clones. They each walked up to Naruto and handed him 2 scrolls, confusing both the blonde genin and his Jonin sensei. What is this? He asked as he took both of the scrolls. We spent the night gathering information in a few gambling houses, one of the clones said with a grin before dispelling himself. We won a bit of money, the other said before dispelling. The memories of the 2 clones filled Naruto's head, causing his eyes to widen slightly before shaking his head and sealing the scrolls away in the storage seal on his wrist. How much did they win? Yamato asked, seeing his student's reaction. 10 million ryo each, he replied with a sigh, causing his sensei's eyes to widen in shock. I better not let grandmother find out about this or else she will drag me to every gambling hall in the Fire Country, Naruto thought to himself before looking at his sensei. Should we head over to the bandits' camp now? Naruto asked, knocking his sensei out of his shock. Yes, let's go, Yamato replied before 2 of them started tree hopping to the northeastern section of the forest. It took them 30 minutes to arrive at the location of the bandits' camp. The bandits had set up quite a large camp and had enclosed it with a tall wooden fence. Naruto and his sensei were hidden up in a tree about 25 feet away from the camp. They had used their respected wood release ability to grow a few more branches around them to help shield them from being seen. Wanting to see how well his student was at strategic mission planning, he asked him a question. How would you proceed from here, Naruto? Yamato asked, confusing his student for a split second before Naruto realized what his sensei was doing. I would first scope out the layout of their camp and then plan my assault from there, he replied in a serious voice, impressing his sensei once more. And how would you scope out the layout of the camp? Yamato asked, causing Naruto to think for a few seconds before he provided a reply. I would create 2 clones and have them transform into birds and fly over the camp, getting a top-down view of the camp, he said, surprising his sensei. Yamato was thinking of kidnapping one of the bandits and transforming a clone into the captured bandit before infiltrating the camp, but Naruto's way was less risky and more effective. Wonderful plan, Naruto, Yamato said with an approving nod. Go ahead and send out your clones, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head before creating 2 shadow clones. The 2 clones transformed into 2 hawks before flying out from behind the tree branches. The 2 clones under the disguise of hawks flew around the camp for about half an hour, getting a good look at the layout before they both dispelled, sending the information back to Naruto. Okay, my clones dispelled, Naruto said, getting his sensei's attention as he processed the information he received from the clones. There are 20 medium-sized tents inside of the camp and 1 large one in the center, likely belonging to their leader, Naruto said, informing his sensei. There are only 2 exits to the camp, he said before pulling the tree branch back slightly and pointing at the large wooden gate. That is one, and there is an identical one on the opposite side of the camp. Each of the exits has two bandits guarding them armed only with a simple katana, he said, causing his sensei to nod at his. There is no sort of order or formation to the tent placement, they just seem to be scattered around the massive one, he finished, earning another approving nod from his sensei at his detailed description of the camp's layout. Nice job, Naruto, Yamato said, nodding approvingly. Now tell me, how would we proceed, giving the layout of the camp? He asked as he continued to test his student. We should split up and cover both exits, preventing any of them from escaping, Naruto replied in a confident tone. With that in mind, we could do this two ways, he said, causing his sensei to raise an eyebrow at him. We could do it right now and be big and bold, or we could wait until nightfall and pick them off discreetly one by one under the cover of the night, he suggested, causing his sensei to contemplate the options carefully before responding. We will wait until nightfall and attack under the cover of darkness, Yamato suggested. He was a former Anbu captain, so being discreet was his specialty. Yes, sensei, Naruto replied before making himself comfortable behind all of the branches. While they were waiting for the sun to go down, Naruto began to check his kunai and shurikens, making sure he had enough in his holsters in case he may need them. The teacher and student duo stayed up in the tree watching bandits come and go in and out of the cap for the entire day until the sun went down. Even though it was now dark out, Naruto and Yamato were waiting for the bandits to go to sleep, lowering the risk of them being discovered. Much to their dismay, however, the bandits seemed to choose this night to have a party. It would appear as though they are having a party of some sort, Yamato commented as he peeped out from behind the branch to see the band of bandits drinking and singing around a large bonfire in the center of the camp. We will wait 2 more hours for them to get drunk, then we attack, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head. Yamato then took out a small scroll and unsealed 2 wireless radios and handed one to Naruto. We will use this to communicate with each other, he said as he handed the radio to Naruto. Set it to channel 7, he added. Naruto nodded his head before attaching the radio to his belt before putting the earpiece in his ear and setting it to the right channel. I will be going to cover the other exit, will you be okay? Yamato asked, slightly worried about his student. I'll be fine, sensei, Naruto replied with a confident look on his face. Very well then, I will radio in when it is time to begin, Yamato said before he stood up in the shadows of the tree and took off for the other exit, leaving Naruto alone. Naruto unsealed his metal staff and held it tightly in his hands. If he was being honest with himself, he was a bit nervous. This was the first time he would be killing someone. He knew as a shinobi he would be expected to kill, this was the life he decided to live. All of his grandmother's training along with his own mental preparation was to prepare him for moments like what was about to take place. Taking a few deep breaths, he calmed himself down and took on a cold look on his face before standing up and began making his way through the trees to a poorly lit section of the camp and waited for his sensei to give the word. He stood in the shadows of the tree for 2 hours before his sensei's voice came through the radio. Okay Naruto, they seem drunk enough. Let us begin, Yamato said into Naruto's earpiece. Roger that, sensei, Naruto said into the radio before he carefully hopped up onto the wooden fence and stared into the camp. There were a few tents in front of him, but there were no lights on in them, signaling no one might be in there. Naruto then looked to his left and saw the 2 gate guards standing on either side of the open gate. Deciding to take them out first, he began on top of the fence in the direction of the guards. As he was getting closer, he began channeling wind chakra into the staff, turning its dull edges into a sharp blade. When he got to the edge of the gate, he leapt up into the air and swan dived down towards the ground. As he was approaching the ground, Naruto twisted his body to the right and swung his staff out in a circle before landing on the ground. As his feet touched the ground, the heads of the 2 gate guards fell to the ground, followed by their headless bodies. Knowing he did not have time to mull over the fact that he just killed 2 people, he leapt off in the direction of a nearby tent with the lights on. As he was heading towards the tent, one of the bandits was exiting from it. Coincidentally, as the man exited the tent, he turned and looked in the direction of the gate and saw Naruto running towards him and the two headless bodies of the guard in front of the gate. Opening his mouth to yell out and warn the other bandits, Naruto shoved his staff into the man's mouth, piercing right through his head before a single word could come out. Using his staff, Naruto quickly pulled the man into the tent from which he came out, only to find another bandit inside sitting on a makeshift bed. Acting quickly, he took out a kunai from his holster and added his wind chakra to it before throwing it at the man on the bed. Before the bandit could even register what was going on, a wind chakra-infused kunai buried itself into his head, causing him to fall back onto the bed dead. In less than 6 seconds, Naruto had killed 4 bandits. Naruto then turned off the lights inside of the tent and peeked outside. There was another tent directly opposite from the one Naruto was in, and he could see someone was moving around inside. Looking around, making sure no one was around, he dashed into the tent to find a man standing with his back facing him, counting money with a wide smile on his face. Sneaking up behind the man, Naruto placed his hand over his mouth and slit his throat with a kunai before turning the lights off, just as he did in the previous tent. As he was about to exit the tent, he could hear someone talking just out behind the tent. Carefully sneaking outside, he snuck around the tent to see who it was. He carefully peeked his head around the corner of the tent and saw 2 drunk bandits talking to each other. "Man, I'll tell you. That house we robbed last night was loaded," one of the bandits said. "Tell me about it. I got this gold necklace from the bastard," the other said while showing the necklace around his neck. Shaking his head, Naruto ran out from around the corner and stuck his staff coated in wind chakra right through the throats of the 2 drunk men, silencing any possible screams. Naruto then held up a half-ram seal and created 4 wood clones. He sent 2 off to the right and 2 off to the left while he stayed in the middle. The 5 of them then went tent by tent, killing every bandit who was not at the giant bonfire. When Naruto reached the edge of where the bonfire party was going on, his death toll had risen to 11, giving that most of the bandits were at the party. Hiding in the shadows, he radioed his sensei. "Yamato-sensei, come in," he said in a whisper over the radio. "Yamato here," his sensei replied in a slightly worried voice. "Are you okay, Naruto?" he asked. "I'm fine. I'm just wondering how you want to deal with the group at the bonfire," he asked as he made 2 more clones and have them help his other 2 clones surround the party. "Is everything all tied up on your side?" Yamato asked. "Yes, all are dead except for those around the fire," Naruto replied in a whisper. "Well then, in that case, I think it is time for us to be bold," Yamato said, causing Naruto to smirk slightly. "Roger that, sensei," Naruto said with a smile before he quickly created a clone and dispelled it immediately, allowing its memory of the conversation with his sensei and his plan to transfer to the other clones surrounding the fire. Naruto then walked out of the shadows and stood in the middle of the part watching the bandits partying. All of a sudden Naruto saw wooden beams and branches coming from all directions rushing towards the group of bandits. It did not harm any of them, however, it just trapped them all around the fire. "What's going on?" the leader of the bandits asked. "The trees have come alive," a drunk bandit screamed. Naruto chuckled to himself before he flashed through a few hand signs before ending with the snake hand seal. "Wood style. Wood dragon jutsu," he yelled out, causing a giant wooden serpentine dragon to burst out from the ground in front of him and rush towards the group of bandits. "It's a dragon," a few bandits yelled while pointing at the dragon. Every single bandit was frozen in fear when they saw the terrifying dragon coming towards them. Like a snake, the wooden dragon wrapped itself around the group of 20 or so bandits, grouping them together before Naruto gave it the order to begin squeezing. The giant dragon constricted itself around the bandits tighter and tighter until all of them were dead. Naruto stared at the scene before him and blinked a few times before he ran over to the side of one of the tents and puked his guts out. Yamato walked around the dragon looking for his student, only to find him hunched over the side of one of the tents puking. "You okay there, Naruto? Yamato asked in a concerned voice. I'm fine, sensei, Naruto replied before throwing up some more. Yamato nodded his head before turning away from his student to look at the giant dragon. He knew this was something Naruto had to go through in order to become a better shinobi. He was familiar with the sickness Naruto was feeling at the moment, every shinobi was. For Naruto, it affected him later than it normally would for some people due to him being in the middle of a mission, but for most people, it affected them immediately after they first killed someone. Now he was not just dealing with the fact that he killed one person, he was dealing with killing multiple people. Yamato was a bit worried about his student but knew he was going to be okay. Focusing on the giant dragon in front of him, Yamato cannot help but be amazed by it. He had tried to make one long ago but could never actually do it. He chalked it up to not being naturally born with the wood release like Naruto. So, Naruto said, getting Yamato's attention. What now? He asked as he wiped the side of his mouth. Well, now we destroy the bodies before we set up camp for the night, Yamato replied as he looked around. However, I got a feeling your dragon is going to take care of destroying everything, correct? He asked while looking at his student who simply nodded his head. Yeah, we just need to put some distance bet us in the camp, Naruto said, still feeling kind of upset. Alright, let's head back to Tanzuku quarters for the night, Yamato said, earning a nod from Naruto. The two then took off in the direction of the town. When they were a safe enough distance from the camp, Naruto blew up the wood dragon, destroying the entire camp. The duo arrived at the entrance to the lively town in 30 minutes. Just as they were about to walk through the entrance, a bird's cry in the air caught their attention. Looking up, they saw what appears to be a hawk circling the air above the two of them. Is that hawk flying at night? Naruto asked in a surprised tone as he knew hawks only hunt during the day. It is a messenger from the Leaf Village, Yamato said as he held out his arm. You can see that from here? Naruto asked in a disbelieving voice, wondering how his sensei could tell that it was a messenger hawk. The bird flew down and gently landed on Yamato's arm. It was a brown hawk that had a black bag strapped to his back. Yamato opened the bag and took out a small scroll cooling bag again and giving the hawk a little push off. The hawk flew off into the night in the direction of the village. Yamato then opened the scroll and began reading it before a serious look appeared on his face. Trouble? Naruto asked in a curious voice. It would appear as though Squad 7 set out on a C-rank mission to the Land of Waves, but apparently the client lied about the dangers of the mission, which would upgrade the mission request to a B or A rank mission if he had been truthful, Yamato explained, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. We are being ordered to head to the Land of Waves and back up Squad 7, he said, causing Naruto to nod. How long will it take to get there? Naruto asked. If we leave now, we should be there by sunrise, Yamato said as he rolled up the scroll. The Land of Waves is pretty close to here, he added, causing Naruto to nod his head before letting out a sigh. The two of them then took off for the Land of Waves at top speed. Squad 7, that's the squad with the last Uchiha on it, correct? Naruto asked while they were running. Correct. It is led by Kakashi Hatake, Yamato replied as he was slightly looking forward to seeing his former Anbu captain. Of course, it is the Uchiha who gets himself in trouble and needs rescuing, Naruto said with a chuckle as they continued on their way to the Land of Wave. Naruto and his sensei had been traveling for the majority of the night, only stopping for a small break once. The sun was just beginning to rise, and Naruto and his sensei had just arrived at the shores of the Land of Fire. They were staring out at a rather large river in front of them, trying to see the shores on the other side but could not because of the dense fog covering the area. The Land of Waves is just on the other side of this river, Yamato said as he walked up the edge of the water. He then flashed through two hand seals before a few wooden beams came out from the water and formed a small boat. Naruto could not help but smile when he saw this. Got to love wood release, he commented with a smile, causing his sensei to chuckle before making two oars out of wood. Naruto then held up a half-ram seal and created two shadow clones to row the boat. Wood release and shadow clones, it almost feels as though we are cheating, Yamato said as he stepped into the boat. Naruto let out a small laugh before stepping in the boat as well. He sat at the back of the boat while his sensei sat in the front with the two clones rowing the boat in the center. Naruto leaned back in the boat and propped his legs up over the side before he took a deep breath of the morning air. What exactly was Team 7's mission? Naruto asked as he exhaled. The scroll did not go into many details about what happened, but apparently they had a mission to protect a bridge builder while he was building a bridge in the land of waves, Yamato explained as they sailed through the morning fog. The client request was for C-rank level protection, but apparently he lied about the danger he was in, he said, causing Naruto to contemplate on the details he just received. I'm guessing there are ninjas that are after the bridge builder. Naruto asked, earning a nod from his sensei. That is the only hypothesis that makes any sense as to why Kakashi-senpai would request backup for a C-rank mission, Yamato said. Naruto still had a puzzled look on his face, however, there was something about the whole situation that was bugging him. How did Team 7 get a C-rank mission to begin with? He asked with a puzzled look on his face. It's only been a week since they were a team. The most mission they could have completed in that time is about 14 D-rank missions, Naruto added as he folded his arms. That's well below the required 26, he said. That is true, Yamato said as he began thinking about what his student said. The only reason we got one this early is that we completed 51 D-rank missions, and that is thanks to the clones. Naruto continued, trying to figure out why Team 7 was allowed to break the rules. They are well below the required amount but still allowed to go on a C-rank mission, he said before letting out a sigh. Something does not add up, he added. Let it go, it's best not to get involved in village politics, Yamato said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at him. It was an odd statement in Naruto's opinion. How is this village politics? Naruto asked himself. His sensei clearly knew something he did not. I am the acting head of the Senju clan, Naruto said, surprising his sensei. Yamato was not aware of that fact, he had assumed Tsunade was still the head of the clan. So, getting into the politics of the village is part of the job, Naruto added, earning an understanding nod from his sensei. Well, you see, Yamato began as he let out a sigh. The only reason that I could think of as to why they were allowed to go on a C-rank mission before meeting the necessary requirements is that Sasuke Uchiha is part of the team, he said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow in confusion. Why would he be the reason? He asked, clearly confused as to why the Uchiha is getting special treatment. Well, you are new to the village, so it is understandable that you wouldn't know, Yamato said, remind Naruto that there was still a lot about the village that he was unfamiliar with. Ever since the Uchiha massacre, Sasuke Uchiha was treated like a king by the civilian council. They made sure he had an easy time in the academy and they basically do anything he asks them to do, he said, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow. But that still does not explain how they got a C-rank mission, Naruto stated, knowing very well the civilians do not have that kind of power. Even if they spoil the idiot, they don't have any authority over mission assignments, he said. In recent years, the civilian part of the council has been in the good graces of the three elders, Yamato said, causing Naruto to narrow his eyes further. His grandmother and godfather had warned him about those three old fools. That has made them believe that they can act out even against some of the shinobi of the village. It is likely that Sasuke Uchiha had complained to the council about doing D-rank missions. And the council probably ordered one of the Chunins in the assignment hall to give him a C-rank mission when Hokage was not there, Yamato speculated. Naruto was getting angrier and angrier the more his sensei went on. I am going to raise hell over this, Naruto said, plotting how he was going to tear into the council once he gets back. And why did Kakashi go along with all this? He asked the next question that came to mind. Kakashi-senpai probably that it was a simple C-rank mission, Yamato said, coming to the defense of his former captain. You rarely experience combat on a C rank mission. We saw combat on ours because it was a more advanced C rank mission, whereas the mission Team 7 was assigned the most they would have had to deal with was bandits and highwaymen, he said with a sigh. For Kakashi to request backup means that they likely encountered an enemy Jonin, he added. Naruto was about to say something, but before he could, one of the clones spoke up, getting his attention. Whoa, what is that? The clone asked in a surprised voice while squinting his eyes to see through the fog. Naruto looked ahead of the boat and could see the silhouette of something large in front of them. What the hell is that? He asked in a surprised voice as the boat got closer and closer to the thing. I believe that is the bridge that is being built, Yamato said as they stared up at the extremely tall structure. I have to admit it is quite impressive, he added, earning him a nod from his student. It's the biggest bridge I've ever seen, Naruto said before turning his attention to the front of the boat. Are we supposed to go through there? He asked while pointing to what looks like a tunnel. Yeah, Yamato said as he looked where his student was pointing. On the other side of the tunnel is the land of waves, he said. When the board exited the tunnel, Naruto could not help but marvel at the splendid beauty that was the land of waves. The fog was absent beyond the tunnel, allowing them to see clearly at the beautiful landscape before them. This place looks so peaceful, Naruto said as he stared out over the sparkling water. The clones continued to row the boat until they arrived at the local dock. Disembarking from the boat, Naruto looked at his sensei and spoke. How are we supposed to find this bridge builder's house? He asked as he dispelled his clones. I guess we should ask around, Yamato suggested. The duo then began walking around the small port looking for someone to ask. There were very few people around, which surprised Yamato. He remembered the land of waves being very lively and prosperous when he last came here, but now everything looks abandoned and run down. They finally found an old man sitting by one of the docks and decided to ask him. Excuse me, Yamato said, getting the man's attention. Can you tell us how to get to the bridge builder's house? He asked, causing the old man to narrow his eyes at them. Why do you want to find Tsunade's house? The man asked as he eyed the teacher-student duo with a suspicious eye. Well, we are from the Leaf Village, Yamato explained. Some of our colleagues were hired to protect Tsunade. We are here as backup, he said, causing the man's eyes to widen slightly. Oh heavens. Thank you, the man said, puzzling Naruto and Yamato. Sorry for my mistrust. I just thought you were one of the ninjas trying to kill Tsunade, the man said with a relieved look on his face. Tsunade's house is in the village more inland, the man said before walking past Naruto and pointing to a pathway going through the small forest. That pathway will take you to the village. Tsunade's house is located at the very end of the village, on the waterfront, he said, causing Naruto and Yamato to nod at him with a grateful look on their faces. Thank you very much, Yamato said as both he and Naruto bowed slightly to the old man before they began walking towards the village. The duo walked for about 30 minutes before they arrived at the village. As they were walking through the village, both Naruto and his sensei were surprised at the state of things here in the land of the wave. It looked like the entire country was struck by poverty, but neither of them could understand why. Usually, a country is hit by poverty because of a war of some sort, but no war had taken place here. As they walked through the village, they drew fearful stares from the villagers. Something is definitely happening here that we are unaware of, Naruto noted in a whisper for his sensei to hear. I agree, Yamato said with a slight nod. Hopefully Kakashi-senpai can tell us more, he added as he continued down the dirt road to Tsunade's house. They walked for about another 15 minutes before they arrived at a small 2-story house on the waterfront with a small dock behind it. They walked up to the front door and knocked on it a few times. Some voices could be heard from inside the house along with some people shuffling around. Suddenly, without any warning, the door flew open, and an Uchiha holding a kunai came charging out towards Naruto and Yamato, causing them to raise an eyebrow. The sudden attack was nowhere near fast enough to take either of them by surprise. Naruto sighed to himself before he reached out with his right hand, grabbed the Uchiha by the throat and lifted him the air. He then took his left hand, grabbed the boy's hand that was holding the kunai before pinning him to the side of the door frame. Have you lost your damn mind, boy? Naruto said as he held the Uchiha up against the door frame, causing him to drop the kunai and began gasping for air. Yamato looked on with a slightly amused look on his face before he calmly walked past his student and stepped into the house. Why in God's name are you attacking someone so blindly? He asked. If Naruto was being honest, he was enjoying himself at the moment. Let Sasuke go. Came a screech from inside the house, causing Naruto to flinch slightly and looked over to see who was screeching like that. When he looked over, he saw the pink-haired girl from the academy. If he remembered correctly, he believed her name was Sakura Haruno. Let him go, Naruto, his sensei said in an amused tone from inside the house, causing Naruto to let go of his grip. Sasuke then fell to the ground, hunched over, holding his throat while gasping for air. Naruto did not even spare him a glance, he just walked into the house, passing the pink-haired girl running past him, heading to check on the Uchiha. Sasuke was on the ground clutching his throat, glaring daggers into Naruto's back. How is he so powerful? Sasuke screamed in his mind. He moved so fast and had me pinned to the wall like I was some plaything. He thought as his anger continued to rise. I am an Uchiha, an elite. How can I lose to a freaking Senju? He thought in anger. Sasuke, are you okay? Sakura asked as she kneeled down beside her teammate. Seeing the look Sakura was giving him only pissed him off further. She was looking at him with pity. He sounded out before standing up, putting a tough look on his face as though he was fine before heading into the house. Sasuke's so cool. Sakura squealed in her head before following him inside the house. With Naruto. As Naruto entered the house, he saw Team 7's Jonin sensei sitting behind a table with an old man to his right and a pale-faced boy who Naruto recalled was named Sai, sitting to his left. Next to the old man was a young woman who looked to be in her late 20s to early 30s, and next to her was a little boy who had a sour look on his face. The group looks like they were getting ready to have breakfast, judging from all the food that laid out on the table. You look like you have seen better days, Kakashi-senpai, Yamato said with a smile as he walked up to the table. I'm just suffering from a bit of chakra exhaustion, nothing major, the silver-haired Jonin said with a wave as Sakura and Sasuke came and sat down beside Sai. But when I requested the village to send reinforcements, I didn't expect them to send the Leaf Village's star Genin team, he said in a mildly surprising, teasing tone. His team, on the other hand, was beyond confused at what he meant. What do you mean, sensei? Sakura asked with a confused look on her face. Naruto and Yamato sat down at the table, resting their legs for a bit. Don't you know? Sai asked as looked over at his two teammates with a smile that Naruto can immediately tell is fake. Team 11 is all the talk around the village by both shinobi and civilians, he said with a fake smile, surprising his two teammates. But how are they so famous? Sakura asked. They broke the record for completing the most mission in a single week, Kakashi said in an impressed tone as he looked at Yamato and Naruto. 51D rank mission in a single week, that's beyond impressive, he added, causing his two clueless students' eyes to widen in shock. But how is that possible? Sakura asked while Sasuke simply glared at Naruto. Hard work and determination, Naruto said, causing the two Jonin to chuckle. So Kakashi, Yamato said in a serious tone. Are you going to brief us on what's going on? He asked as he looked at his old friend. We had just completed a C rank mission when we received word to back you up, and the scroll we received didn't go into much detail, he said, earning a nod from his fellow Jonin. Kakashi then began explaining to the two of them about the details of their mission along with their encounters on the way to the Land of Waves. Naruto had to admit he was surprised by the amount of trouble they went through just to get the bridge builder to him. First encountering the demon brothers from the hidden mist and then encountering the demon himself, Zabuza Momochi. But the thing that surprised Naruto and Yamato the most was the fact that these men were all hired by Gato, one of the wealthiest men in the world. I guess that explains why the village looks the way it does, Naruto noted, causing Tazuna and his daughter to nod their heads. Yes, ever since Gato showed up here all of the sufferings began, Tazuna said with an angry look on his face. Naruto and Yamato nodded their heads with a sympathetic look on their faces. The table then fell silent for a few minutes before Sakura broke the silence. You said you guys were on a C-rank mission? She asked, earning a nod from Naruto and Yamato. What was your mission? She asked, causing everyone to look at Naruto and Yamato. Nothing too major. We just had to eliminate some bandits near Tanzaku quarters, Naruto replied, causing the girl to tilt her head to the side in confusion. If you guys had to rush here after your mission, what did you do with the bandits you captured? She asked, causing Naruto, Yamato, and Kakashi to look at her strangely. I didn't say our mission was to capture bandits, Ms. Haruno, Naruto said in a calm tone as he stared at the pink-haired girl. Sakura was confused even more by Naruto's statement. I said our mission was to eliminate them, he said, putting emphasis on the word, eliminate. Sakura thought about it for a few seconds before her eyes widened in shock. You mean you? She said before trailing off, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at her. Sasuke was absolutely jealous when he heard what Naruto's mission was. That is a mission that should have been given to an elite like me, not a loser like him. He thought to him as a look of jealousy was written all over his face. Naruto caught a glimpse of it and could not help but smirk. So, what is the plan going forward? Naruto asked in a serious tone. Well, I began training my genin in the tree walking exercise, you can join in if you want, he said, causing Naruto and Yamato to look at him with a deadpan look on their faces. I'm sure it will take a loser like you a few weeks to understand something like that, Sasuke blurted out with an arrogant look on his face, causing Naruto to sweat drop. I knew how to do the tree walking exercise since I was 5, Naruto said, surprising everyone at the table excluding his sensei. And it only took my 4 days, he added, causing the arrogant smirk that was on the Uchiha's face to disappear and replaced with a surprised, jealous look. He had been going at it for 3 days now and was nowhere close to climbing the tree, but somehow the Senju had known this technique since he was 5. That fact just pissed Sasuke off. You brought your students on a C-rank mission without teaching them chakra control, Kakashi-senpai. Yamato asked with a disappointed look on his face. Well, we've been focusing on teamwork mostly, Kakashi said with a nervous chuckle, causing both Naruto and his sensei to shake their head disapprovingly. Well then, Yamato said before turning to Tazuna. While Kakashi-senpai recovers and his genin train, you will be guarded by either myself or Naruto here, he said while pointing to Naruto, who waved and smiled at him. Is that brat really going to be able to protect me? Tazuna asked in a straightforward manner, causing Yamato to chuckle. He is only a genin in rank, Yamato said, surprising everyone. His skills are well beyond that of an average jonin, he added, surprising Kakashi and his students. He has even defeated me a few times, he said, causing everyone's eyes to widen in shock. You will be safe in my care, I promise, Naruto said with a warm smile. Sasuke was staring at Naruto with a disbelieving look on his face while Tazuna's grandson was glaring at him. How can a loser like him be as powerful as a jonin? Sasuke asked himself as he stared at Naruto with a jealous look on his face. That kind of power should be mine. I need it to kill my brother and avenge my clan. He thought angrily. Lord Danzo must be made aware of this, Sai noted in his mind while staring at Naruto. Naruto, I will take the first shift, Yamato said as he turned to his student. You go get some rest, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head and stood up before he began heading outside. Naruto, Tazuna's daughter called out, getting his attention. There is a room upstairs where you can rest, she said, causing Naruto to smile at her before speaking. Thank you, but it is already pretty crowded in here, I'll set up a house outside, he said nonchalantly before walking outside. Everyone except his sensei stared at him in confusion. What does he mean, set up a house? Sakura asked the question on everyone's mind. Yamato just smiled before he spoke. You should go take a look outside, you'll see something special, he said with a smirk. Wanting to see what the Jonin was talking about, the 3 genin, 2 Jonin, and 3 civilians headed outside to see what the blonde was going to do. When they got outside, they saw Naruto standing in the open space near Tsunade's house flashing through hand seals before ending with the snake seal. Wood style. 4-pillar house jutsu. Naruto called out before slamming both of his palms on the ground. Sending chakra into the ground, Naruto caused wooden pillars to burst up from the ground and began shaping themselves into a house. It took 3 seconds before a large 2-story house constructed itself in the once empty space. Above the doors to the house was the Senju clan's symbol engraved in the wood. Naruto then stood up straight and dusted off his hand before turning to his spectators only to see all of them except his sensei gaping like a fish. He always got a kick out of seeing people's reaction to his bloodline. See you, he said before walking into the house to get some rest while at the same time leaving a group of stunned shinobi behind. Yamato, that was. Kakashi began. Yes, Yamato replied with a smirk. That was the first Hokage's bloodline, Sakura whispered out. How can he have the first Hokage's bloodline? She asked, forgetting the fact that Naruto was a Senju. Well, that's because the first Hokage is his great-great-grandfather, Yamato replied. So that is the bloodline that is said to rival the Sharingan, Sasuke noted. Lord Danzo must be made aware of this. Sai thought to himself. Originally, he was placed on his team to keep an eye on Sasuke Uchiha, but this changes things. A brat like that might put me out of business, Tsunade said, causing Yamato to chuckle. I better get to the bridge, he added before looking at Yamato, who nodded. After heading back inside to grab his things, Tsunade and Yamato set out for the bridge. You 3 head to the forest and continue your training, Kakashi said while looking at his students. Sasuke took one final look at the house and growled before walking off to the forest with Sakura and Sai following closely behind. It had been 2 days since Naruto and his sensei arrived at the Land of Waves and 5 days since Team 7's battle with the Demon of the Mist, Zabuza Momochi. Kakashi was almost back to full strength, he was finally able to move around without his crutches. His team had spent most of the week training with the tree exercise while Naruto and Yamato would protect the bridge builder while he was building the bridge. Naruto for his part could not understand how a Jonin sensei could take his students out on a C-rank mission without even teaching them proper chakra control. Naruto had very few interactions with Kakashi's team. He would only see them at breakfast or dinner, other than that they spent most of their time in the forest training. The Uchiha was especially driven after getting a glimpse of the gap between Naruto and himself. The only female on the team was only in the forest training every day so she could spend more time with the Uchiha, leaving Naruto to wonder whether or not the girl had any real goals and aspirations as a kunoichi. Then there was the last member of Team 7, Sai. From the little time Naruto spent around the boy, he could immediately tell that there was more to the boy than he let on. His skills were well beyond Sasuke's, but for some reason, he seems to be holding himself back as though he was trying to appear weak on purpose. It wasn't until his sensei told him that the boy reminded him of one of Danzo's root agents that Naruto realized what was going on. It appeared as though Danzo either wanted to keep an eye on Sasuke Uchiha or he wanted Sasuke to join his little organization. Before he left the fire capital, his grandmother and godfather had warned him about the elders of the village, especially the one named Danzo. They explained to him in detail who Danzo was and what his goals were. They told him that Danzo would eventually try to recruit him, and if he couldn't recruit him, he would try to control him. Thinking about it all, Naruto found it laughable at the thought that he could be controlled by some crippled old fool who has yet to realize that his time has passed. Naruto was currently sitting on the roof of the house he had built. He had finished having breakfast with everyone a couple of minutes ago, was waiting for Tsunade to get ready to head to the bridge. It was his turn to take the morning shift protecting Tazuna while his sensei would get some rest after being up all night keeping watch. Taking a deep breath of the fresh morning air, Naruto smiled and spoke to himself. What a beautiful morning, he said as he exhaled out and closed his eyes, taking in the sounds and feel of nature all around him. It was early in the morning and the sun had not risen as yet and the morning air was still clean. Maybe it was because of his bloodline, but Naruto had always loved the feel of nature. It was the thing that made him enjoy gardening so much. Hey brat, are you going to stay up there daydreaming all day? Tazuna asked from down on the ground, interrupting Naruto's nature-loving. Or are you going to do your damn job and protect me? The man shouted from below, causing Naruto's eyebrow to twitch in irritation. He sighed to himself before he hopped off the roof and landed down beside the old man. Must you be so loud in the morning? Naruto said with a slight groan. You damn brat, Tazuna said with a growl. Just keep me safe while I'm building my bridge and stop complaining, the man said before he started walking off in the direction of the bridge. Naruto sighed and followed behind him while keeping his guard up. As they were walking to the bridge, Naruto could see a few people already out this early in the morning going to their respected jobs. Some of them were wearing construction gear and followed Tazuna and Naruto to the bridge. Naruto could see a few shady individuals lingering in alleyways watching Tazuna as they walked by. Making a note of their appearance, he saw they were all dressed like your common street thugs carrying katanas and short swords on their sides. They were nobody dangerous in Naruto's opinion. There doesn't seem to be any shinobi with them, he noted in his mind as he was paying extreme attention to his surroundings, making note of every single person who even looked at Tazuna. Seems as though there might be some action on the bridge today, Naruto thought excitedly as he saw all those shady individuals eyeing Tazuna. It took them 15 minutes to arrive at the bridge, and immediately upon arrival, Tazuna and his men got to work picking up where they left off yesterday. Naruto honestly had nothing to do while he was guarding Tazuna. He didn't know he was going to be spending this much time away from the village on his first C-rank mission, so he did not bring anything to entertain himself. If he had known that they would be taking a detour like they did, he would have brought a few jutsu scrolls with him to keep himself occupied. Sighing to himself, he turned to Tazuna and spoke. Hey, old man, Naruto called out, getting his attention. You want some help? He asked. Do you know how to build a bridge? Tazuna asked with his eyebrows raised. Not a clue, Naruto replied with a smile, causing the old man to growl slightly. But I got manpower, he added as he held up the Shadow Clone hand seal. Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto shouted, creating a large puff of smoke around. When his smoke disappeared, 200 copies of Naruto stood there waving at Tazuna with smiles on their faces. Tazuna and his workers stood there gaping at Naruto after seeing what he had done. Ha ha ha, I knew there was a reason I liked you, kid, Tazuna replied with a boisterous laugh, causing Naruto's eyebrow to twitch. With this many hands we'll finish this bridge in no time, he said, causing the few workers he had left to cheer. Tazuna then began assigning jobs to the clones while the real Naruto walked over to the corner of the bridge and sat down on a pile of lumber. He couldn't go work with his clones mainly because that would take his attention away from Tazuna. Sighing to himself, Naruto sat down and watched as his clones and Tazuna's workers scramble around the bridge carrying out their jobs. *** 6 hours later. It had been 6 hours since Tazuna and Naruto's clones began working on the bridge. They had stopped for lunch and Naruto had dispelled all of his clones, opting to make new ones after lunch. Everyone was scattered all over the bridge in various groups eating their lunches. Naruto was still sitting on the pile of lumber eating a sandwich that Tazuna's daughter, Tsunade, made for him. Naruto was enjoying his sandwich when he sensed some people walking on the bridge heading in their direction. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto looked over to his left and saw 4 men walking towards them with smug looks on their faces. The 4 men all had swords strapped to their sides, but Naruto sensed that they had little to no chakra. These must be Gado's thugs, Naruto noted as he continued to eat. The men were not a threat worth getting worked up about, but he was interested as to why they were here. Gato had hired a pretty powerful shinobi to kill the old man. There was no way that he would send these common thugs to do the job. This is a rather nice looking bridge, one of the men said, getting everyone's attention. It was clear that he was the leader of the small group. It is a damn shame that it won't be completed, he added with a cocky smirk on his face. Tsunade and his workers all jumped up their feet in fear when they saw the men. What the hell are you clowns doing here? Tsunade yelled, asked before looking over to Naruto only to see him calmly eating his sandwich without a care in the world. Well, obviously we are here to kill you, another one of the thugs said with a chuckle, causing his friends to laugh. Gato may have hired ninjas to kill you, but if we were to do it, we would be rewarded generously, one of the men said with a greedy look on his face. Naruto sighed as he finished his sandwich and stood up. So, greed is what brought you here, he said as he reached into his kunai holster and pulled out a single kunai before he began walking in the direction of the four men. Who the hell are you, brat? The leader of the four asked, clearly angry that the boy in front of him was not scared. Do you want to die? He asked as he unsheathed his sword. The only people dying here today are you four, Naruto replied as he narrowed his eyes dangerously.